art is a great luxury. However poor you are, you're always in a luxurious atmosphere. You're a man doing what he likes to do, which you can't say about the average man. The average man says, I hate my job. I hate punching the clock. But shit, I've got to live. Do you understand? Now the artist sort of says, fuck that. Whether I live or die, I'm going to do what I want. What I want.
They say that heaven is like TV, a perfect little world that doesn't really need you, and everything there is made of light, and the days keep going by. Here they come. Here they come. Here they come.
I want to fall into that movie. I don't want to be critical about it, you know? I think that what is real, really so, is something that you cannot express at all. But you know it. You have the feeling about it. And it's a feeling that I have about reality that I am trying to reach. To capture the sense of reality, I make a distinction between what is usually called reality and what is reality. I'm not interested in everyday reality. I want to penetrate that. But that is a sort of an inexpressible thing. I don't care how long I live. I can die tonight and it'll be all right with me. Because I am reconciled with death now. Sometimes when one thinks about death, approaching death, one thinks of it as a very, very interesting part of life. It should not always be shunned and frowned upon and sort of put away. It should be welcomed. Do you understand? What the hell? It's all part of the universe. Do you see what I mean? And maybe it has treasures unknown for us. Death, don't you know? We only think the worst all the time, that we are going out, our little candle is blowing out. Do you see what I mean? And who are we after all? We're the tiniest midgets. I always say I don't mind death. I hate dying, though. Dying, I'm afraid of. You know, I'll admit that. I'm afraid of dying, but what's after that, I don't worry about it. I accept it. I don't know what it would be. I have no idea. But I have an innate feeling that it can only be better than this shit trap that we're in. Do you see what I mean? As you get near the grave, things are not so important anymore as they once seemed to be. Now the important thing is death or the future life that you may have.
Right behind you.
In the beginning of your life, you're very anxious, you're struggling and so on, racing, you see, to get ahead and so on. And after a while, you ask yourself in middle life, what are we doing this for? And toward the end of your life, you see that it's all foolishness.
Of somebody else.
I have this feeling of reincarnation very strongly, yes. I don't know if it's true. Do you understand? But I have a strong feeling about it.
I'm gonna get there. On my own.
But then I will hail death as a brother who's come to relieve me.
This train, this city, this train, this city.
Brother Death, here I am. Take me.
This train.
My next guest is a very attractive actress and model who left Mississippi, came to Hollywood to act and teach ballet. And the book is called Dear, Dear Brenda, and it is actual love letters and kind of details, well, I guess the rather unusual relationship between the celebrated author. I guess his best-known work is The Tropic of Cancer, Henry Miller. Would you please welcome Brenda Venus. Brenda? Hello, Brenda.
Hello, Johnny.
Now, Henry Miller, when you met him, had to be a rather elderly man.
I think Henry was 83 when I met him.
83 years old. Mm-hmm. And you were how old, if you don't mind my asking?
Probably about 23 or 24, somewhere in there.
Yeah. Now, how did you get to meet Henry Miller?
I wrote him a letter. I read him when I was in college, and I thought that one day I would meet this man. But then I forgot all about it, and I had a fire. Lost everything I owned. My mother kept saying, did you get your insurance? And I would say, sure, Mom, sure. Yeah. But I didn't. And so I lost everything, and I said, well, I think I'll write Henry. And he was supposed to give a talk at an acting class, and that was the night I had my fire. So I decided to go ahead and write the letter and send a couple of photos.
Mm-hmm.
And he responded.
I can imagine. Brenda?
I remember everything. Everything that happened to me in life, I remember. Images, voices, sounds, smells, tastes, everything. Fantastic things, yes.
She said, what is his story? And he said, his story is an angel being blown.
Naturally, I came from a world where I had been with people all the time, seeing things, going places, don't you know? Everything was eventful. Every day was full of life, of things. Now I'm alone with nature. You might say with God, if you like.
Fix things to repair the things that have been broken.
The idea is you stay there till you have reviewed your whole life in detail and understood the whole pattern of your life. To meet those people you mistreated in your life, whom you did dirt to, and now you confront them again in the other world, and you begin to understand why and what happened and so on. That's a part of it I like.
And this storm is called progress.
I always dread to think what would happen if I meet my mother in the beyond, do you see? Would we get reconciled finally, don't you know? I got reconciled to my father. We began to understand one another, and we could talk. It was beautiful. I don't remember ever saying to my mother, Mother, I love you, Oh, Mother, you are wonderful. I don't remember ever saying, nor did she ever say it to me. She was always telling me what a devil I was, or how stupid I was, or this or that. I was a stupid in her opinion. Do you know that? Maybe I was at that time, don't you know? Yeah. But I know there was no exchange of affection. Yeah, none whatever.
Said his story is a pile of debris, and the angel wants to go back and fix things.
Well, my father had no use for artists. He thought they were all crack-brained and no money and all that. See, my relations with him, they were rather cool while I worked in the tailor shop. He was always very wonderful. And he always believed in what I was doing, though he never read anything, you know. Well, my sister was a moron and was born half-witted. And she was a great burden in my life because I had to defend her when the kids called crazy Loretta, you know. Made fun of her, pulled her hair, and oh, terrible. And then she had the faculty of crying easily over nothing, maybe out of joy, but silent tears. She didn't cry loudly, silent. They just flew down like that, poured down her face. And you never knew why. You'd ask her why. She might say, I'm happy. You know, it was, very emotional. Then my mother starts to teach her. And my mother couldn't teach her. My mother was terrible. She used to crack her, hit her. And she'd say, how much is 2 times 2? And my sister'd be frantic. She'd say, 5. No. 7. No. 3. You know, just wild. Bang. My mother hit her. And my mother would turn to me and say, why did I have to bear this cross? What did I do to be punished? Ask me, a little boy. I'll never forget my mother when she died. You know, she was such a difficult woman for me.
And I always remember the eyelid opening when she was laid out as a corpse, you know. And we visited her once every day. She laid out for 7 days, I think, in a mortuary. And every time I came to bend over her and look at her, pretend to give a kiss, I never did, one eye would open. Would you believe that? Would you believe that? That happened. It was the weirdest thing, yeah. The undertaker would come and close it, yeah. It was like she, even when we were trying to bury her, she was in the coffin. It was a snowy day, the wind is blowing, and that coffin is going south like a ship that's, you know, being knocked about. They couldn't get it to fall down into that hole.
I love you. I love you. I love you 3 times. I've said that many times. Try to make it different. I love you. I love you. I love you. I was married a few years, I guess, when finally I ran into this Mona in my books, you know, in the dance hall. And we were caught in bed one morning when I thought my wife had gone on a vacation. She'd only done that to trap me, and there she found me in bed, you see, in my own house with witnesses and everything. So I left her immediately, went to live with June, Mona. I am a writer who's never writing. I had made one attempt to write with a little broken pencil once, can you imagine? And I wrote a page and gave it up. I said I never would be able to write. Well, but nevertheless, it was in there, in me, and stories and novels I'm writing as I walk, dialogues with characters. And I can remember it. I could say I wrote several books in this period that I worked for my father. June and I lived together. She still worked at the dance hall and used to say to me, look, give up that job, start to write, you know. She pushed me into it. And one day I did quit. I quit like that.
All right, I'll tell you.
June appeared like an angel. I offered her a fool's faith.
And so?
So I married her. She gave me the courage to finally quit my job so I could write full time. She believed in me.
I never forget, I walked up Broadway feeling like the happiest man on earth, that I'm no longer going to work for anybody. That was my idea. Now I'm going to write, you see. But that was a beautiful walk, looking at all these poor bastards who are working, struggling, selling things, buying things, you know. But then began my 10 years of misery, you know, trying then to sell my work. Had no luck. I got on to the idea I should send my wife, who was beautiful, send her in with these things. And of course, then they sold. I love you, I love you, I love you, yeah.
Ennis, meet my wife, June.
I love you now. I will love you at 100.
And you gave me great help, I remember, because you used to go over my early scripts, you remember, and say, look, don't put all of that. That isn't necessary, you know, and you used to have to fight with me about it because I thought it was important. I thought everything was important. Now, you know, if I had the power, I would reduce everything. I would write the smallest books if I could, if I had to. I appreciate them, you know.
But you turned out to be right, because everybody was more worried about what I left out than what I put in.
Ah, that's a good point. That's a right, yeah.
I've never been with a woman I could be so sincere with. I feel so free to write now.
I'll help you.
And I'll help you.
I can't get the truth of it. I don't get to the truth, you know. So one night when his own son is in bed with his wife, son's wife, he steals into the hallway with a little lantern, and he stands and he watches them while they are fucking. This is crazy. They're fucking one another, rolling around, and he's making notes. Yeah. Now comes another scene where well, here I am. I can write, and I will write, and nobody will deny me. I will write what no man dares to say, and they can take it or leave it, but I think they will take it. But at any rate, I found my voice there in Paris, and I wrote that book, which I guess started all the trouble and the success at the same time. And that was the Tropic of Cancer.
It's finished now.
Not yet. Now we've got to get it published.
Published? Who'll publish it? I know what they'll say. There's even laws against what I've written. But I feel good now. I'm ready to celebrate my failure.
Don't you think we all should have a drink now?
I'll get you some. Don't
Would
move.
you?
Don't move.
All
Don't
right.
move. It's
A
fine.
gin and tonic for
I really
me?
think it's...
What's strength?
Oh,
Bread. That's bread. That's 5 days old.
Wow.
Nam myoho.
Nam myoho renge kyo. Nam myoho renge kyo.
Nam myoho renge kyo.
Hold your, you have this thing recording? I'm going to give you this while I'm at it, too.
Yeah.
you say, you know, this business of that dirty book, you laugh. You said that dirty book. And the big question ultimately is really, why did you insist upon that? What liberating value does that have? I mean, you know, after all, you insisted upon it. You could have
insisted upon what?
So-called upset.
Oh, using this language and so on.
Yeah. You know,
Yeah. Why did I?
Why? What therapeutics did it have?
Listen, the author never knows. That's my answer. You don't know why you did it. You know, you think that an author, he has definite ideas and plans. Well, you do in a slight way, but you write in order to find out what you're writing about, who you are, and why, and what for. Do you understand? It's a voyage of discovery.
I don't know, something very strong and selfish about you, especially in your writings. And I very often think that now I'm witnessing in you the birth of your best self right now. And I have the impression that you are now a much better person than you were in your books.
I tried in my books to give the worst side of myself. Deliberately. Oh, yes, I emphasized the bad side of myself. I think that the descriptions of myself that I gave in the books are of a period when I am struggling. I'm really struggling to survive. And I've always been rather proud, even if mistakenly so, that I had enough animal qualities in me to survive. But that meant cultivating unlovely qualities.
When you write, what dictates to you?
I follow it, if you can understand that it. I don't take much credit for what I write, you know. Really, it could be said anonymous. It's it writing. Something takes over, and I let it take over.
Vulgar, vile, profane, and indecent words or language were found on 112 pages. There are 20 at a conservative count in the four-letter category, namely, one most frequently used beginning with F and ending with K. Cunt, next most used, designating women or a portion of their anatomy. Slut, bone, cock, hole, putz, twat, sexy, laid, make, heat, suck, cum, clap, dose, fart, shit, piss, leak. 10 five-letter words frequently used are prick, bitch, whore, semen, turds, shits, balls, juice, crack, and fairy.
Vulgar, vile, profane, and indecent words or language were found upon 112 pages. There are 20 at a conservative count in the four-letter category.
You know, that's a decisive act.
A lot of that could come out of this. I can say this much, that my hatred and rebellion against the society we live in, especially our American society, made me choose foul language, not to shock them so much, because I am disturbed and angry and so on. So all I can say is that shit, fuck, piss, and all that, you know what I mean? Get it out, spill it on them, you know.
While the use of those words alone do not make the book obscene, they do tend to establish, the court believes, that the book as a whole has no significant literary, cultural, or educational character.
While the use of those
Together, those words make the four-letter words of dirt and smut. That conclusion is further supported by the statements such as on page 119, quote, "If only once she had slipped me a piece of A, once in a while," end quote. Would the court stenographer read back the relevant section of my opinion?
If only she had slipped me a piece of A once in a while.
It's not a thing that we decide. We don't decide very much anyhow in life, I feel. You know that? We are pushed by forces one way and that way. We are like in a Sargasso Sea in our own life, in my mind. This thing is society. It's whirling around us. Everything. Oh, the government, the police, sex, you know, everything is a maelstrom around us in which we are being tossed like little shells. That's how I feel. That's why art is a great luxury. However poor you are, you're always in a luxurious atmosphere. You're a man doing what he likes to do, which you can't say about the average man. The average man says, I hate my job. I hate punching the clock. But shit, I've got to live. Do you understand? Now the artist sort of says, fuck that. Whether I live or die, I'm going to do what I want. What I want. For all the wonders I had seen, I had never lived alone entirely. And in the midst of nature, I had never handled a hoe, a spade, or even a rake, do you know, huh? I knew nothing about anything connected with nature. And suddenly, right outside my door was a jungle of poison oak, about, I'd say, 1/4 of an acre big. Well, anyhow, that was a great mystical experience to me. Then is when I began to really feel that maybe there was a, what you'd call a mystical side to me. All the beauty, the glamour, and the mystical quality of the mountains and the hills, and the fog rolling in, and the storms walking in. You could see it walking on the water like toward you. It was marvelous. You understand, it isn't that I went to Big Sur looking for a change of life, of nature, and so on. You know, it was an accident that I got there, do you see? Once there, I accepted it. Once in any place, I accepted where I was. I've often said if I went to jail, I think if I were put in prison, I would adapt to it. I would soon have the warden and the jailers around me at my fingertips helping me. Do you understand? That's what I think. So is that my change, or I'm adapting? That's all. Do you know what I mean? Ask yourself, do you think people change very much in the course of their lives? I don't think I noticed that. I don't think people change essentially. Essentially, they are always the same. If you're born a prick, you remain one, you know, and if you're a saint, you remain one, no matter what the circumstances. Naturally, I went through many evolutions of situations I didn't fit into. When I went to Big Sur, you know, I was a bum again, a beggar. It was later on that I realized I had been in a paradise. Later. What hits me is the mountains, the ocean, the sky, the storms, the birds, the wind, things like that. That's Big Sur to me. Nature and people too, naturally. The great, simple, ordinary people who were not really ordinary. They were extraordinary in their ordinariness, if I can put it that way. Don't you see? Well, I was there about a month, wasn't I? In Big Sur, when Emil wrote me a letter from Alaska. He was working in Alaska and wanted to know if he could come down and help me. He said he'd do anything. Cook for me, take care of everything, the correspondence and all that. Just wanted to come down. And I said, yes, come. And he did. I could say that it was a great experience of life to come there as a city man, a thoroughly cityfied man, you know, and learn to live in the country and with people as neighbors whom I was not particularly interested in when I first met. I was sort of poo-pooing them. They're peasants-like, you know what I mean? But later I discovered they had wonderful qualities, you know.
I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. No. I love you. I love you. I love you. Yeah.
Having children was a great event in my life. That was a very different thing. I had never reckoned with having 2 children, you know what I mean? And I adapted to that, I thought, very well. I loved it. Do you understand? Yes. I was there, they were there. The children are born, it's natural. You take them home, you raise them. I don't know, it was all completely natural. Like a plant growing, you might say, don't you see? It gives out leaves, it gives bananas or oranges. Do you understand? Very much like that. And maybe you remember when I took you, 2 of you, to the forest and we would sit on the edge. There was a little stream and I'd say, now just sit here and look at that other bank. You say, why? I say, don't ask me why, just look, you know. I mean, I often wondered if you remembered that. And I want to tell you one thing. You know that I quarreled a great deal with your mother. Now, every morning I could bank on it. While eating my breakfast, there would be a violent quarrel. And it was my custom after breakfast to go up to the studio and work, which I would do after these terrible quarrels. And I can still remember sitting there and laughing as I'm writing my stories, don't you know? How that could happen, I don't know, but I could completely change from one atmosphere to another, or one being into another, don't you know? And then, when I had to let you go, you remember, I couldn't handle you. I've told you again and again how I would walk out of the house afterwards and I would stumble across a toy or a broken something that you had used, and I would gush with tears, don't you know, huh? Pick it up and wipe my eyes and go through great sorrow. And often later I castigated myself. I said it would have been 1,000 times better had I stuck it out with you, no matter how miserable you created the situation, and gave up all the writing just to take care of you. And I would have learned more maybe doing that than writing my books. Do you see what I mean? I've gone through all those guilt and reflections, you know, a year later. You know, your sister wrote me a wonderful letter one day. I was commenting on how her nature had changed. Now she seemed such a happy person. Said, Val, what do you attribute this to? And she says, loneliness, living alone, not loneliness. She wasn't lonely, but living alone. And I said, Val, you're never living alone. You're living with the stars, with the ocean, with the trees, the animals. It's the greatest society you can live with. Do you see what I mean, huh? Then, with all this, you must remember that the strangest thing is that every now and then I will tell somebody, a stranger, that I'm a Brooklyn boy. And the strangest thing about my whole psyche is that the richest and strongest part of my memory are the years from 5 to 10 in that 14th ward. I remember every single thing, every building, every friend, little friend and big friend that I had. I remember the names of the merchants, the streets, the schools, everything. It's as clearer than any part of my life. Painting is an expression of my freedom, of my nonchalance, of my not giving a damn, so to speak. Do you see? Yes. You see, I have no notion of how you begin a painting or what you should do. I begin by letting my hand do something. I have also found this from experience, that it is possible to transmute the bad into the good, the wrong into the right. There is always this possibility. It would be an utterly uninteresting world if everything was black and white, remains that way. But I do believe in transmutation.
It seems that man must have some definite meaning given to things, or he won't be happy. Now, I can do without that meaning as an individual. I don't have to have that. Things can be meaningless to me and still be enjoyable and livable, you know. But there seems to be something, a fear. Man is a basic anguish, by the way, I find. He's an unhappy, restless, disturbed individual. And this desire to find meaning and put order into things and give significance to it is only because he's uncomfortable in the universe in which he finds himself. And I think the only important thing to know in life is how to surrender. Until you know how to surrender, you don't know anything about life. Give in. But the primary thing is, I think, it's just for me the pleasure of picking up the brush and seeing what happens. And by the way, that's another thing, that word "to happen." That again is a big word for me. Rather than plan and deliberate and execute, is to let things happen and let it decide for it, because I think it knows better than you know, or I know, you know. Because after all, damn it, what is an artist or any creative person after all? He should be a person who's curious and aware and concerned with everything in life. And he's only expressing a tiny little bit through his art, you might say. Do you know?
Obviously, he was in love with you. I mean...
Yes, yes, he was in love with me, yes. And I was in love with him.
Right.
It's a different kind of love. I think it's a love of the heart. He was there for me. He was my protector. He was my teacher. He was...
Was it a father-daughter relationship, or was it more of a...
He didn't like that, no. He didn't want you to call him Grandpa or Daddy or, you know. He didn't, no. He wanted just to be a friend. I was a fantasy figure, I think, for Henry.
Right. No. So was he bedridden at this time? I mean, he was rather frail when you met it.
Yeah, when I met him, he was, and everyone said he was sort of on his last leg. Yeah. And he kind of got out of bed and started painting and writing and...
Well, what are you folks laughing at?
These are pictures of the homes.
The flesh always is going toward deterioration. But something in man, on the other hand, keeps growing in the other sense. Maybe as he's falling apart, you know, like a tree growing old, he is becoming a greater thing of beauty in some way. You should accept whatever comes to you, you know. You don't question it or ask the reason why, you know.
Red rockets, bright red glare.
I never renounce what I have done, even if what I said was foolish or wrong. That was a part of me then, and it belongs. It should not be taken out, you see, cleared up and cleaned up.
You've got to increase your consciousness, raise your consciousness, then you forget about good and bad. You will instinctively do the right thing because it'll be the living right thing. Everything is beyond our comprehension, really, don't you know? We can study till our doomsday, you know, and we will never know the answer to why. Why anything? Do you see? How did it happen? You learn from observation. Pay attention to everything. Watch closely. Observe how things happen, don't you know? Always concentrate on whatever you're doing. Don't do things listlessly, haphazardly. Do you see what I mean? And then to a stranger, it may seem like you're just another ant, the way you are going about it. Well, you get possessed, by the way. That's something that doesn't happen with the workaday horse, don't you know? You get possessed.
One thing determines the next thing, do you see? And when you come down to it philosophically, in a Zen thing, like Zen, the idea is, you know, you live from moment to moment. So in doing that, this moment decides the next step. You shouldn't be 5 steps ahead, only the very next one. And if you can keep to that, you're always all right. And I think this is a very important thing in life, that people learn how to play, and that they make life a game rather than a struggle, you know, for goals. But the playing is so much more important, I think. All this thinking and creation is just a game. There is no ultimate significance to it. But it's a high game. It's the best game there is. But it's only a game, you see, making us perfect and enjoying our future that'll be marvelous and all that sort of thing. And love thy neighbor as thyself, huh? But a game, a great game, in which tremendous forces are put at work, huh? Against one another, pitted against, where evil and justice and right, they are of the same proportion, you know, and they both play a part, and nobody can figure it out. This is also the thing I like, that none of us will ever be able to figure this game out, do you see? But we can work within this framework that's been given us, you know, to a limited degree, and enjoy it even.
See